The Mask of the Dead Man. Every year on Halloween, our small town holds a contest for the scariest mask. People prepare for weeks as if this is the most important event of their lives. Sometimes the masks they wear are so realistic that they make you wonder if there's something more than a pieces of plastic, fabric, and paint. There's nothing supernatural about them, or at least that's what I thought. This year, I decided to participate. It was more than an impulsive decision, inspired by boredom and the need to prove to myself that all this fuss was just a child's game. So, I set out to find a mask, something ordinary, something that wouldn't require too much effort. I wandered around several stores, but I didn't like anything. Everything seemed so dull. Until I stumbled upon a small antique shop at the edge of town, a place I had never noticed before. The sign above the door was faded and the window was dusty, but inside, I saw something that instantly caught my attention. In the corner, tossed among old furniture and broken mirrors, lay a mask. It looked like it was made from old dried wood, but its shape was so detailed that for a moment I thought it was made from something alive. The face was grotesquely deformed, twisted into a grotesque grimace, and the eye sockets were empty, yet somehow they seemed to follow me. I felt it. It was perfectly terrifying, exactly what I was looking for. The shop owner was an old man with hands that trembled slightly as he handed it to me. He said something strange. "This mask, it's not for everyone. It was part of a ritual. If you wear it, you will feel things you don't want to know." I smiled and bought it for a nominal price, convinced that the old man was just trying to add mystery to an old object. Still, something in his gaze unsettled me. It felt like a warning. When I got home, I placed the mask on the shelf and examined it closely. The material was rough and cold to the touch, as if it had a life of its own. I ran my fingers along its curved features and felt a strange chill run down my spine. But I left it there and forgot about it. That night, I was supposed to be ready for the contest, or so I thought. But the night of the contest wasn't what I expected. When the time finally came to put on the mask, I felt something strange. It seemed to tighten. As I brought it closer to my face, it clung tightly, too tightly. I immediately felt discomfort, but I ignored that feeling. I was determined to win the prize. As I walked towards the party venue, something began to trouble me. I felt the gazes of the people around me, not the ordinary, curious looks of passers-by. They looked at me as if they saw something different, something they couldn't recognize. The children who usually ran through the streets stopped and stared at me with fear in their eyes. One child even screamed when I passed by him. When I arrived at the party, everyone was already there, masked, smiling, and awaiting the prize. But as soon as I entered, the atmosphere seemed to change. People recoiled from me, as if something about my presence terrified them. My friends asked me what kind of mask I was wearing, but I couldn't tell them. I didn't even know the story behind it, so I just replied that I found it in a shop, and I tried to ignore their tense gazes. The night passed in a strange haze. The party ended, but I didn't win the prize. In fact, no one even approached me. Anyone who glanced at the mask quickly looked away. As I was leaving, walking home, I noticed something strange. Every lamp I passed extinguished. The wind whistled around me, and shadows began to move as if they had a life of their own. When I got home, I immediately tried to remove the mask, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like it was glued to my face. My fingers slipped over its rough surface, but nothing happened. It was as if it had become part of me. Then came the first dream. I dreamed of a ritual. I was in an old, abandoned church surrounded by people in dark robes, their faces hidden in shadows. I stood in the center of a circle, and before me, a fire burned on the altar. I heard whispers, unfamiliar words that filled me with fear. A man approached me, wearing a mask, the same as mine. He leaned close, whispering, "You are next." I woke up with a trembling body and sweat on my forehead. I looked around, but everything seemed normal, or at least it looked that way. The mask was still on my face. I tried to remove it again, this time with more force, but my skin seemed fused with it. It had rooted itself in me. There was no escape. Then I realized that I couldn't take off the mask. I was forced to move among people with this horrifying face. The gazes of those around me were filled with fear and suspicion. No one recognized me, not because the mask concealed my face, but because I wore something unnatural, something that repelled anyone daring to come close. During the day, people avoided me, whispered, and stepped back, as if sensing that something ominous followed me. With each passing day, my dreams became more vivid. I saw faces. Faces of people who seemed familiar, yet I couldn't recognize them. They looked at me with hatred, and I didn't know why. During the day, I felt a presence behind me, but when I turned around, no one was there. Sometimes I heard voices whispering indistinct words in my ears. I began to believe that the mask was not just an object, it was cursed, and I was its next bearer. One evening, while examining the mask in the mirror, I noticed something horrifying. The eyes in the mask, they had changed. They were no longer empty. They were alive. They were mine. And I no longer controlled my face. My lips stretched into an unnatural smile while my mind screamed for help. The next day, I went to the library and began searching for information about the mask. I found an old handwritten description of a ritual performed centuries ago, where this mask was used to transfer the soul of a dead person into the body of a living person. The memory of the ancient ceremony pierced through me. I realized that this wasn't just a coincidence. I was chosen. As I read the manuscript, horror welled up inside me. The mask wasn't just an object. It was the key to an ancient ritual that allowed the dead to return among the living. The only way they could do it was through a body like mine. The manuscript mentioned numerous victims over the centuries, people who wore the mask and disappeared without a trace after it absorbed their souls. I trembled. I felt my strength leaving me. I sensed the mask beginning to influence my mind, little by little, until eventually it would completely replace me. My heart raced and my chest tightened with each new beat. I needed to find a way to get rid of it. But how? The words from the manuscript were clear. The mask could not be destroyed. It could only be passed on to another, or the ritual had to be completed. One night something happened that shattered any hope I had left. I felt my face began to distort. The mask was no longer just something I wore. It had become part of me. My lips curled into a smile that I couldn't control. My eyes shone with a strange light that wasn't mine. Then I heard the voice, soft, whispering, deep within my consciousness. "You are mine. Soon you will be completely mine." I began to lose my sense of reality. Every night my dreams became clearer, more horrifying. I saw myself as a participant in the ritual. I saw the shadows of those who had worn the mask before me, and I felt their souls surrounding me, trapped in something like an eternal prison. These souls would never find peace. They were captured by the mask, just as mine was now. In the end, desperate and consumed by madness, I decided to return to the antique shop. I believed that perhaps there was a way to return it, to break the cycle. However, the shop was no longer there. In its place stood an empty, crumbling building that looked like it had been abandoned for years. But I knew that this wasn't the truth. The shop had never existed. It had been merely an entrance to something deeper, darker. and I had entered it willingly. There was no turning back now. Then I saw one opportunity. I remembered the manuscript, completing the ritual. If I completed the ritual, maybe I could save my soul, or at least put an end to the nightmare. The manuscript spoke of an old, forgotten place where the ritual had been performed, an abandoned church on the outskirts of town. I decided to go there. This was my last hope. When I arrived, everything seemed dead. The church was crumbling, and the air around it felt heavy, oppressive. I began to chant the words from the manuscript, praying that it would work. As I finished, the mask began to glow. My skin tingled, and I felt something shift within me. The shadows around me grew, swirling and enveloping me. And then I heard the voices again. They were everywhere, demanding and pleading. They wanted freedom. Suddenly I realized that the shadows were the souls of those who had worn the mask before me, trapped for eternity. Their cries echoed around me, and I felt their pain, their desperation. I understood that by completing the ritual, I wasn't freeing myself. I was dooming countless others. I hesitated, but it was too late. The power surged through me. I could feel it drawing me in, pulling me into its depths. The mask slipped from my hands and clung to my face once more, sealing my fate. I could feel my soul being dragged away, leaving behind an empty shell. And then, darkness enveloped me. I woke up in the middle of the night, no longer in my body. I felt free, but I could also feel the weight of the mask. It had claimed another victim. I saw my body lying on the ground, and the mask. It was searching for its next owner. On Halloween night, it would awaken once again, looking for another soul to carry. And now, as I roam this dark world, I am only a shadow. I am trapped in this mask, waiting for the day when it will once again find a new victim. Every Halloween, I watch as it searches for someone unsuspecting, just like I was. The cycle continues, and I am forever bound to the mask of the dead man. This Halloween, who will be next? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to find out what will be the next story.